The executive floor of Vanguard Industries had never been so quiet. Sebastian Voss, the notoriously ruthless Alpha CEO, whose mere presence could silence a room, stood in the glass-walled lobby at 7:47 a.m. on a Monday morning. Not with his usual black coffee and Financial Times, but with two screaming infants strapped to his chest in a tandem baby carrier, their cries echoing through the marble atrium like an alarm that couldn't be shut off. His Armani suit was stained with what appeared to be baby formula, his normally perfect hair disheveled, and his ice-blue eyes held something no one had ever seen before: complete and utter confusion. The sight was so absurd, so fundamentally wrong, that every employee who entered the building froze mid-step, their morning greetings dying on their lips as they watched their intimidating CEO attempt to bounce the babies into silence while completely failing. For 2 years, Elliot Chun had successfully executed what he called his gray man protocol. Arrive at 7:30 a.m. before most of the executive team, keep his head down in his compliance department cubicle on the 14th floor, deliver spotless work that required no follow-up questions, and leave at exactly 5 p.m. without ever drawing attention from the upper floors. As an Omega in a company run by an Alpha CEO with a reputation for sniffing out weakness and dishonesty like a bloodhound, Elliot knew that survival meant invisibility. Military-grade suppressants masked his designation, neutral-colored suits camouflaged his lean frame, and he'd perfected the art of never making eye contact with anyone above the director level. Sebastian Voss was a legend at Vanguard, a self-made billionaire who'd built the tech security empire from nothing, an alpha so dominant that even other alphas deferred to him, a man who could identify a lie before you finished telling it. Elliot had seen him exactly 4 times in 2 years, always from a safe distance, and that was precisely how he wanted to keep it. His entire life depended on Sebastian Voss never, ever noticing he existed. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers and tell me where you're watching from. The Monday morning routine at Vanguard Industries died at exactly 7:47 a.m. Elliot Chun had just badged through security on the 14th floor, his third cup of coffee in hand, and his mind already running through the compliance audit he needed to finish before noon, when he heard it. A sound so foreign to the pristine glass and steel fortress of corporate efficiency that his brain struggled to identify it at first: babies crying. Not just fussing, full-throated, desperate screaming that echoed up through the central atrium like a fire alarm no one could silence. He wasn't the only one frozen in confusion. Every employee on every floor had stopped mid-stride, heads turning toward the executive elevator bank where the sound originated. Elliot's Omega instincts, buried deep under 2 years of suppressants and willful denial, suddenly flared to life with an urgency that made his chest physically ache. His hand tightened on his coffee cup hard enough that the cardboard buckled. "Is that?" His cubicle neighbor, Dana, appeared at his shoulder, eyes wide. "Are those actual human children?" Before Elliot could answer, his phone buzzed with the emergency notification that appeared on every device in the building simultaneously. Mandatory all-hands meeting. Conference room A immediately. The gossip ignited like wildfire as 300 employees flooded toward the main conference space. Elliot kept his head down, positioning himself in the back corner as always, but his heart hammered against his ribs. The crying had stopped, replaced by an ominous silence that felt even worse. Then Sebastian Voss walked in. The CEO looked like he'd survived a natural disaster. His normally immaculate Tom Ford suit was wrinkled, marked with suspicious stains that could only be milk or spit up. His steel-gray hair, usually ruthlessly styled, fell across his forehead in disarray. Dark circles shadowed his ice-blue eyes. And strapped to his chest in what appeared to be a tandem baby carrier meant for someone far less intimidating were 2 infants, maybe 6 or 7 months old, their faces red and tear-streaked, their tiny fists clenched in fury. The sight was so fundamentally wrong that the room remained silent even after Sebastian reached the podium. "I'll keep this brief," Sebastian said, his voice carrying that alpha command that made even senior executives straighten unconsciously. "At approximately 11:30 p.m. last night, these children were left at the gate of my private residence in a car seat with a note." He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, and even from the back of the room, Elliot could see Sebastian's hand wasn't entirely steady. The note stated, and I quote, "Their parent works at Vanguard. I can't do this anymore. Please find them." The explosion of whispers was immediate. Sebastian raised one hand and silence crashed back down. "I've already involved the appropriate authorities, but they've given me 72 hours to conduct an internal investigation before this becomes a police matter and child services gets involved." His gaze swept the room with predatory precision. "I am asking, once, for whoever is responsible to come forward. No questions, no judgment, no legal consequences. These children need their parent, and that parent clearly needs help. Elliot couldn't breathe. The room tilted sideways. Because he knew God, he knew those features. Even from this distance, even through the tears and the red faces, he could see the shape of their eyes, the curve of their cheeks. Lily's small nose. Lucas's serious expression, even while crying. His babies. His twins. The ones he'd given up 8 months ago to a private adoption agency because an unmated Omega with children was unemployable, unmarriageable, and utterly alone. The ones who were supposed to have gone to a loving family upstate, far away where he'd never have to see them and be reminded of his failure. How were they here? How did they end up with Sebastian Voss of all people? The little boy, Lucas, his mind supplied traitorously, started whimpering again. The sound cut through Elliot like a physical blade. Before he could stop himself, before his carefully constructed walls could slam back into place, he made a soft sound. Not quite a word, just a gentle, soothing noise that he used to make during those 3 precious days in the hospital before he'd signed away his rights. Lucas's head turned. His dark eyes, so familiar they made Elliot's throat close, found Elliot in the back of the crowd with unerring accuracy. The baby's crying stopped. His small arms reached out, fingers grasping at air. 300 people turned to see who Lucas was reaching for. And Sebastian Voss's predatory gaze locked onto Elliot Chun like a missile finding its target. You. Sebastian's voice cut through the silence. Not a question. A command. Mister. He glanced at someone with a tablet near the podium who whispered frantically. Mr. Chun. My office. Now. Elliot's suppressants couldn't quite mask the spike of pure fear scent that escaped him. His carefully maintained invisibility, his gray man protocol, his entire safe existence. All of it shattered in the space between one heartbeat and the next. And as he walked toward the exit on legs that barely functioned, he felt Sebastian's alpha presence following him like a shadow that finally, inevitably, had learned his name. Marcus Kim cornered Elliot in the compliance department break room exactly 47 minutes after the meeting, his expression somewhere between horrified and grimly amused. As the only other person at Vanguard who knew Elliot's secret, both the Omega designation and the twins, Marcus had earned the right to say, I told you this would explode in your face, without Elliot arguing. You're moving into Sebastian Voss's penthouse, Marcus said flatly, blocking the door. The Sebastian Voss. The alpha who can smell a lie from 3 floors away. You, an Omega on suppressants, carrying his biological children. Don't give me that look. I saw those babies, they have his bone structure, are moving into his territory. I don't have a choice, Elliot whispered, glancing around to make sure they were alone. They're my children, Marcus. I can't abandon them again. This is literally the plot of every alpha/Omega romance novel ever written. Forced proximity, babies, mate bonds, the whole catastrophic package. Marcus pinched the bridge of his nose. Your suppressants are already failing. I can send you from here, which means he definitely can. How long do you think you have before he figures out everything? I don't know. Elliot's voice cracked. But what am I supposed to do? Walk away? Let them go to strangers again. Marcus's expression softened. No. God, no, I'd never ask you to do that. Just be careful. Sebastian Voss doesn't do anything without a reason. If he's keeping you close, it's because he's already suspicious. And when alphas like him figure out they've been lied to, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. By 7 p.m., Elliot stood in the private elevator that serviced only the penthouse level of Sebastian's building in downtown's most exclusive district, a duffel bag of hastily packed belongings in one hand and a diaper bag in the other. The twins were strapped to his chest in the carrier Sebastian had wordlessly handed him, both mercifully asleep after a chaotic afternoon of feeding, changing, and soothing. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, and Elliot's breath caught. The space was stunning and soulless. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city skyline, minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black, art that probably cost more than Elliot's college education. Everything was sharp angles and cold surfaces, beautiful the way a museum was beautiful. Meant to be admired from a distance, never touched. There was no warmth here. No life. It was a showcase, not a home, and Elliot felt like an intruder tracking mud across pristine floors. The nursery is down the hall, second door on the right. Sebastian's voice came from somewhere deeper in the penthouse. Your suite is adjacent. Mrs. Kong, my housekeeper, stocked both rooms with everything you should need. If something's missing, tell her. Elliot found the nursery and nearly laughed at the absurdity. It looked like a luxury baby boutique had exploded, top-of-the-line cribs, A changing table that probably had more technology than his laptop, shelves stocked with toys still in their packaging. Everything perfect and untouched and utterly impersonal. He carefully transferred the twins to their respective cribs, watching them settle into sleep, and his chest ached with the wrongness of it all. They should be in a home filled with laughter and clutter and love, not this sterile palace. He found Sebastian in the kitchen, staring at his phone with an expression of intense concentration. Without the chaos of the office, Elliot could see the exhaustion carved into the alpha's features, the tension in his shoulders. "They're asleep," Elliot said quietly. "Good." Sebastian set his phone down. I should probably hold them at some point. Bond with them. That's what fathers are supposed to do, right?" The vulnerability in that question nearly broke Elliot. "Do you want to try now?" Before they wake up again. They moved to the nursery together, and Elliot carefully lifted Lily from her crib, supporting her head as he transferred her to Sebastian's arms. He showed Sebastian how to position her, how to support her weight, the basic mechanics of holding an infant. Lily's eyes opened. She took one look at Sebastian's face, so close, so unfamiliar, and began to wail. Sebastian's entire body went rigid. "What did I?" "Nothing, you didn't do anything wrong," Elliot said quickly, taking Lily back. She settled immediately against his chest. "She just doesn't know you yet." "She knows you." Sebastian's voice was flat, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. 18 hours old in my care, and she knows you." "I'm not. Don't." Sebastian cut him off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I can smell it, under the suppressants. You're Omega. You have been this entire time." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "I built an empire on reading people, on trusting my instincts, and I've had someone lying to me by omission for 2 years. That's on me." Elliot's mouth went dry. "Sir, you want to know the worst part?" Sebastian continued, his alpha presence filling the room until Elliot's instincts screamed at him to submit. "I don't even care that you lied. I care that you felt you had to. That this company, my company, made you so afraid that you'd rather hide who you are than risk being seen." He met Elliot's eyes, and the rawness there was startling. "I was abandoned at a fire station when I was 3 because my Omega parent couldn't handle an alpha child alone. I built everything I have on being trustworthy, being dependable, being the person no one would ever want to leave. And these children," his voice cracked, "they don't trust me. They trust you. Because I'm exactly what I've always been afraid of becoming. Someone people need to escape from." Elliot stood frozen, Lily sleeping against his shoulder, watching Sebastian Voss, the Ice King CEO, the ruthless alpha, finally crack open to reveal the terrified child underneath. "You're not untrustworthy," Elliot heard himself say. "You're just scared. There's a difference." Sebastian's laugh was hollow. "Is there?" And in that moment, Elliot realized they were both trapped in the same cage, built from fear, locked from the inside, convinced they didn't deserve the key. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers and tell me where you're watching from. The next morning, Elliot discovered that Sebastian's concept of childcare position bore no resemblance to any nanny job in human history. Mrs. Kong, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who clearly ran Sebastian's household with military precision, led him to a space on the executive floor that had been transformed overnight. What was previously a small conference room now housed 2 state-of-the-art cribs, a changing station, a comfortable rocking chair, and, bizarrely, a full desk setup with dual monitors, a high-speed computer, and enough office supplies to run a small country. "Mr. Voss had IT work through the night," Mrs. Kong explained, her tone suggesting this was perfectly normal behavior. "You'll be managing the twins' schedules, medical appointments, developmental tracking, supply ordering, and coordinating with the pediatrician's office. He set you up with administrative access to his calendar so you can block time for," she consulted her tablet, "mandatory paternal interaction sessions." His words, not mine. Elliot stared at the setup, his sleep-deprived brain struggling to process. "He wants me to schedule him to spend time with his own children?" "Mr. Voss schedules everything," Mrs. Kong said matter-of-factly. "If it's not in his calendar, it doesn't exist. This is actually progress. Last week he didn't have eating lunch blocked off and went 14 hours without food." She softened slightly. "He's trying. He just doesn't know how to do anything that isn't work." By noon, Elliot had fed the twins, changed them 3 times, answered 17 emails about their dietary requirements and sleep schedules, and created a color-coded spreadsheet tracking their feeding times, diaper outputs, and nap patterns because apparently his new job description included data analyst for infant bodily functions. Lucas was currently dozing in the carrier strapped to Elliot's chest while he typed. and Lily was attempting to eat her own foot in the nearby playpen. Sebastian appeared in the doorway at 12:07 p.m., exactly when Elliot had blocked off paternal interaction in his calendar. The CEO looked at the office setup, at Elliot working while literally wearing a baby, at the spreadsheets on the monitor, and something complicated flickered across his face. "This is excessive," Elliot said before he could stop himself. "You're paying me executive-level salary to be a nanny. You gave me an office with equipment worth more than my car. This doesn't make sense." Sebastian stepped inside, closing the door. "I pay for competence. You've kept both twins alive, content, and on a schedule for 18 hours. The 4 professionals before you lasted an average of 3 hours each." He moved to where Lily was playing, crouching down to her level but not touching. She watched him with curious eyes. "That level of competence deserves executive compensation." "That's not why you're doing this," Elliot said quietly. Lucas stirred against his chest, and he automatically adjusted his hold, swaying slightly. "You're keeping me close because you're trying to figure something out." Sebastian's eyes lifted to meet his. Yes, the honesty was startling. Elliot had expected denial, deflection, anything but straightforward admission. "Why did you take them?" Elliot asked, the question that had been burning in his chest since yesterday. "You could have called child services immediately. Let them become someone else's problem. Why did you bring them to the office? Why are you trying so hard?" Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, his gaze still on Lily. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "When I was 3 years old, my Omega parent wrapped me in a blanket, drove me to a fire station, and left me on the steps. I was found 4 hours later. Hypothermic. The note pinned to my blanket said, 'I can't do this anymore.'" He finally looked up at Elliot. "I spent my entire childhood knowing I was unwanted. That the person who was supposed to love me unconditionally chose not to. I built my whole life around never feeling that way again. Never needing anyone, never being vulnerable enough to be abandoned." Elliot's throat tightened. Lucas made a small sound in his sleep, and Elliot's hand moved instinctively to soothe him. "When I found these 2 on my doorstep," Sebastian continued, "my first thought wasn't anger or inconvenience. It was recognition. I looked at them and saw myself, small, helpless, unwanted by the person who should have wanted them most." His jaw tightened. "I couldn't do it. Couldn't call strangers to take them away. Couldn't let them grow up wondering why they weren't enough. So I kept them. Even though I have no idea what I'm doing. Even though they cry when I hold them. Because someone needs to want them, and if their parent couldn't," his voice cracked slightly, "then I will." Elliot stood frozen, Lucas warm against his chest, understanding crashing over him like a wave. Sebastian thought the twins had been abandoned by someone who didn't want them. He had no idea that Elliot had given them up not because they weren't wanted, but because he'd wanted them so desperately that he'd convinced himself they deserved better than a struggling Omega parent with no support and no future. "They're lucky to have you," Elliot managed, the lie tasting like ash. Because these children had been wanted. So profoundly wanted that Elliot had destroyed himself trying to do right by them. And now he was standing here, watching Sebastian claim them out of his own trauma, while Elliot's suppressants failed a little more each day and the truth built like pressure behind his ribs. Sebastian nodded once, standing. 12:45 meeting. "I'll be back at 3 for the next session." And he left, leaving Elliot alone with their children and the terrible weight of everything unsaid. Dr. Patricia Reeves had been a pediatrician for 30 years and possessed the unique ability to make even Sebastian Voss sit up straight and pay attention like a chastised schoolboy. She examined both twins with practiced efficiency in her cheerful office decorated with cartoon animals, making notes on her tablet while Lily attempted to grab her stethoscope and Lucas observed everything with his serious, watchful expression. "They're healthy," Dr. Reeves announced, looking between Sebastian and Elliot with sharp assessment. "Good weight, meeting developmental milestones, no concerning symptoms. But I have questions about their care situation." She fixed Sebastian with a look that suggested his net worth and reputation meant absolutely nothing in her examination room. "You've had them how long?" "For days," Sebastian said tightly. "And you're?" She gestured between them. "I'm their caregiver," Elliot supplied quickly. "Mr. Voss hired me to." "He's the only person they don't scream at," Sebastian interrupted, his jaw set. "I'm attempting to bond with them. It's not going well." Dr. Reeves's expression softened slightly. "How much time are you spending in direct physical contact with them daily?" Sebastian looked to Elliot, who consulted his mental schedule. "Approximately 45 minutes across 3 scheduled sessions." "That's your problem." Dr. Reeves turned to Sebastian. "You're an alpha, correct?" At his curt nod, she continued. These infants need to bond with your scent, your heartbeat, your presence. 45 minutes isn't enough. You need at least 3 to 4 hours of direct skin-to-skin contact daily. Hold them while you work. Sleep near them. Let them learn that you're safe. She gave him a pointed look. I understand you're a busy man, Mr. Voss, but children don't care about your schedule. You want to be their father? You need to actually be present. The drive back to the penthouse was silent except for the twins' occasional babbling from their car seats. Elliot watched Sebastian's profile, saw the muscle jumping in his jaw, the white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. When they arrived home, Sebastian didn't immediately disappear to his home office as usual. Instead, he stood in the nursery doorway while Elliot changed Lily, his expression unreadable. I don't know how to do this, Sebastian said finally, his voice low. The doctor made it sound simple. Just hold them. Be present. But I've spent my entire adult life building walls between myself and everyone else. I turned emotional distance into an art form. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I never had a father figure myself. My adoptive parents were kind but elderly. They provided stability, not warmth. I don't have a template for this. I don't know what being a father even looks like beyond legal responsibility and financial provision. Elliot finished fastening Lily's onesie and lifted her, turning to face Sebastian. You're here, he said quietly. You took them in when you could have walked away. You're trying, even though it terrifies you. That's what being a father looks like. Not perfection. Just showing up. They cry when I hold them. Because they don't know you yet. Not because you're doing it wrong. Elliot moved closer, offering Lily. Try again. No pressure, no schedule. Just hold her. Sebastian accepted Lily with the careful precision of someone defusing a bomb. She squirmed, fussed, and Elliot watched him start to withdraw. Don't pull away when she fusses, Elliot instructed gently. That teaches her you'll disappear when things get hard. Hold her closer. Let her hear your heartbeat. Sebastian adjusted his grip, bringing Lily against his chest. She continued fussing, but didn't escalate to full crying. He swayed slightly, instinctively, and something in his expression cracked open. Wonder mixed with terror mixed with something that looked almost like hope. She's so small, Sebastian murmured. So fragile. What if I? You won't, Elliot said firmly. You're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to not know what you're doing. That's called being human. Give yourself grace. Sebastian's eyes lifted to meet his, and the vulnerability there was staggering. I don't know how to do that. Then let me give it to you until you learn. The words were out before Elliot could stop them, too intimate, too revealing. He stepped back quickly. I should start their dinner. Stay. Sebastian's voice stopped him at the door. Not for the twins. For me. Have dinner with me tonight. A real dinner, not a working meal. No schedules, no caregiving duties. Just, he paused, and Lily had stopped fussing entirely, relaxing against his chest. I've spent 4 days watching you with them, and I don't know anything about you except that you're good at your job and you care about these children. I want to know more. Elliot's heart hammered. This was dangerous territory. Every piece of information he shared was a thread Sebastian could pull to unravel the whole truth. But looking at the alpha holding Lily with such careful tenderness, finally letting his walls crack just enough to ask for connection, Elliot couldn't bring himself to refuse. Okay, he said softly. Dinner. After they're asleep. Sebastian nodded, and something that might have been a smile ghosted across his face. Thank you. Elliot fled to the kitchen, his Omega instincts screaming warnings his heart refused to hear. Because Sebastian Voss wanting to know him wasn't just dangerous, it was inevitable. And when an alpha like Sebastian decided to understand something, he didn't stop until he'd uncovered every last secret. The crisis started at 2:17 a.m. with Lucas's cry. Not his usual fussy sound, but something desperate and wrong that had Elliot bolt upright in his bed with his heart already racing. He reached the nursery in seconds to find Lucas burning up, his small face flushed and his body radiating heat that made Elliot's stomach drop. He pressed a hand to the baby's forehead and felt the fever through his palm like a brand. Sebastian. The name tore from his throat before he could think, all protocols and formality abandoned. Sebastian, something's wrong. The alpha appeared in the doorway within seconds, wearing only sleep pants, his hair disheveled and eyes immediately sharp. What? Fever. High fever. We need a thermometer now. Elliot was already lifting Lucas, supporting his head, feeling the concerning heat against his chest. Sebastian disappeared and returned with the digital thermometer from the medical kit Dr. Reeves had insisted they keep stocked. 103.4 degrees. Hospital, Sebastian said immediately, already reaching for his phone. Wait, check Lily. Elliot's Omega instincts were screaming. Twins shared everything, including illnesses. Sebastian moved to Lily's crib and went rigid. She's hot too. They moved with focused synchronization born from pure adrenaline. Sebastian called their pediatrician's emergency line, while Elliot stripped both twins down to their diapers to help cool them. Dr. Reeves answered on the third ring, her voice alert despite the hour, and walked them through the immediate steps. Lukewarm water, infant acetaminophen, monitoring for seizures. She'd meet them at the hospital in 30 minutes. The emergency room was a fluorescent nightmare. Nurses moved efficiently, taking vitals, starting 4 fluids when both twins proved too dehydrated to keep anything down. Possible infection, they said. Running tests. The words blurred together as Elliot held Lily while a nurse inserted her 4, his own hands shaking so badly he could barely keep her steady. Sebastian stood beside him with Lucas, one large hand cupping the baby's head, his face carved from stone but his scent. His alpha scent that Elliot's failing suppressants could no longer fully block was pure terror. Viral infection, Dr. Reeves announced 4 hours later as dawn light crept through the hospital windows. Common but aggressive. They'll need to stay for observation, for fluids, fever management. You did everything right by bringing them in immediately. She looked between them with something like approval. They're lucky to have you both. Sebastian said nothing. His jaw was locked so tight Elliot worried his teeth would crack. They were discharged that evening with strict instructions and prescriptions. Back at the penthouse, they settled into a rotation. One of them awake with the twins at all times, monitoring temperatures, administering medicine, soothing fevered cries. Hours blurred. Day became night became day again. Elliot found himself working alongside Sebastian in wordless coordination, their movements synchronized in a way that should have been impossible for 2 people who barely knew each other. On the 3rd night, when both twins finally slept peacefully with normal temperatures, Elliot found Sebastian standing at the nursery window, his shoulders rigid and his hands braced against the frame. "They're okay," Elliot said softly. "The fever broke. They're going to be fine. I thought I was going to lose them." Sebastian's voice was raw, stripped of all his usual control. "When I saw that thermometer reading, when Lucas went limp in my arms," he stopped, his breath shaking. "I've faced hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, assassination threats. Nothing has ever terrified me like watching them suffer and being powerless to stop it." Elliot moved to stand beside him. "You weren't powerless. You got them help. You stayed with them. You were exactly what they needed." Sebastian turned, and the look in his eyes was devastating. "I can't do this alone. I thought I could. Thought if I just paid enough, scheduled enough, controlled enough variables, I could manage. But I can't. I need." He stopped, his alpha pride warring with desperation. "You're not alone," Elliot whispered. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Something broke in Sebastian's expression. He reached out, cupping Elliot's face with one hand, his thumb brushing across his cheekbone. "You're exhausted. You've been awake for 3 days taking care of my children like they're." "They are," Elliot said, the truth escaping before he could stop it. "They're mine. They've always been mine. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from." Sebastian's eyes widened in understanding, but before he could speak, Elliot kissed him. It wasn't graceful or planned, just desperate need meeting desperate need, exhaustion and relief, and something deeper tangling together. Sebastian made a sound low in his chest, his alpha instincts responding to Elliot's omega nature, even as his suppressants finally gave up entirely. When they broke apart, Sebastian's pupils were blown wide, his scent wrapping around Elliot like a physical thing. "You're an omega." "Yes. And they're mine. I gave birth to them. I gave them up because I thought I had to, and then you brought them back, and Elliot's voice cracked. "I can't lose them again. I can't." Sebastian pulled him close, tucking Elliot against his chest. "You won't. I promise you won't." He pressed his face into Elliot's hair, breathing him in. "Stay with me tonight. Not in the guest room. With me. I just need you close." They stumbled to Sebastian's room after checking the twins one more time. The bed was enormous and soft, and Elliot should have felt out of place in this alpha's space, but instead he felt safe. Sebastian pulled him against his chest, their bodies fitting together like they'd been designed for it, and something clicked into place, deep and fundamental and absolutely right. The mate bond, Elliot realized distantly as sleep finally claimed him. This was the mate bond settling, and there was no going back from this. Elliot woke to pale morning light and the unfamiliar weight of an alpha's arm draped across his waist. For one disoriented moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then reality crashed back with devastating clarity. Sebastian's bed. Sebastian's scent surrounding him like a second skin. The mate bond humming between them like a live wire, settled and constant in a way that should have taken months to develop, but had somehow crystallized overnight. Sebastian was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching him with an expression Elliot couldn't read. "The twins are still asleep," he said quietly. "I checked the monitor. Elliot should move. Should say something. Should address what had happened between them." Instead, he stayed frozen, hyper-aware of every point where their bodies touched. The bedroom door opened without warning, because apparently Mrs. Kong didn't believe in knocking, and she swept in with a breakfast tray, took one look at them tangled together in Sebastian's bed, and didn't even blink. "Breakfast for two. The twins will wake in approximately 15 minutes based on their pattern. I've prepared bottles." She set the tray on the dresser with perfect composure. "Mr. Voss, your 9 a.m. board meeting has been moved to 10 a.m. due to Director Chen's request for additional time to review the quarterly reports. Also, your brother called the office line 3 times last night." Sebastian's entire body went rigid against Elliot's. The comfortable warmth between them evaporated instantly, replaced by something cold and dangerous. "Which brother?" "Matthias." Mrs. Kong's tone suggested she'd rather announce a plague outbreak. "I did not return his calls, as per your standing instructions." "Good." Sebastian's voice was flat, but Elliot could feel the tension vibrating through him like a plucked string. "Continue ignoring him." Mrs. Kong nodded and departed, closing the door behind her with a soft click that somehow managed to convey both discretion and approval. "You have a brother," Elliot said carefully. "Half-brother. My adoptive parents' biological son." Sebastian sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "We're not in contact. Haven't been for 15 years. If he's calling now, it's because he wants something, and whatever he wants, the answer is no." Before Elliot could respond, Sebastian's phone lit up on the nightstand. Unknown number. Sebastian stared at it like it might bite, then answered with cold precision. "Sebastian Voss." Even from across the bed, Elliot could hear the male voice on the other end, smooth, calculated, with an edge that made his Omega instincts bristle. "Brother, you've been avoiding my calls. There's a reason for that, Matthias. What do you want?" "I want to congratulate you on your sudden foray into fatherhood. Very touching, the way you've publicly taken in those orphans. The press is eating it up. Ice King CEO shows his soft side. Quite the PR coup." A pause that felt deliberately weighted. Of course, some might wonder about the timing. About who's really caring for those children. About the mysterious new live-in caregiver who appeared out of nowhere. Sebastian's scent went sharp with aggression. "If you have something to say it. Just that family secrets have a way of surfacing eventually. And when they do, I'd hate to see your carefully constructed empire damaged by scandal." The fake concern was nauseating. "Perhaps we should meet. Discuss how to protect the Voss family reputation." "I'll make this simple," Sebastian said, his voice dropping to alpha command that made even Elliot want to submit. "You are not family. You are a mistake from my past that I've already paid for repeatedly. Stay away from my children, stay away from my company, and most importantly, stay away from me. This is the only warning you'll receive." He ended the call and immediately blocked the number, but his hands weren't quite steady. The board meeting at 10 was exactly as hostile as Elliot had feared. He stayed in the executive nursery with the twins, but Sebastian had insisted on leaving his office door open, and sound carried in the empty hallways. 8 directors, all old money and older prejudices, and every single one of them had opinions about Sebastian's impulsive decision to take in the twins. "This is a publicly traded company," Director Harrison's voice boomed. "Your personal life directly impacts shareholder confidence. Taking in unvetted children, hiring an unknown caregiver, making decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Are you finished?" Sebastian's voice cut through like a blade. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. "I will say this once," Sebastian continued, and Elliot could picture him standing at the head of the table, every inch the alpha who'd built an empire through sheer force of will. "Lily and Lucas Voss are my children. Not a PR strategy, not a charitable impulse, my children. I have legal custody, and I am in the process of formal adoption. Anyone who has a problem with that can tender their resignation effective immediately, because my family is not up for discussion or debate." "Sebastian, be reasonable," someone started. "I am being perfectly reasonable. Those children needed someone to want them, and I do. That is the beginning and end of this conversation." A pause. "Now, shall we discuss the actual agenda, or does anyone else want to question my personal life?" No one spoke. Elliot stood in the nursery with Lucas drowsing against his shoulder and Lily playing with her feet in the playpen. Listening to Sebastian defend their family to the most powerful people in his professional world, and felt something crack open in his chest. This wasn't just protection. This was claiming. This was Sebastian Voss, who trusted no one and needed no one, choosing them publicly and irrevocably. And Elliot was still lying to him about everything that mattered. 3 weeks after the board meeting, the transformation was complete. Elliot no longer pretended to be just an employee. His desk had migrated to Sebastian's office, the twins' portable cribs stationed near the windows where afternoon sun pooled warm and golden. Company emails now listed him as special assistant to the CEO, Family Affairs. And when Sebastian had business dinners, Elliot attended at his side. The mate bond had deepened into something constant and grounding, and though they hadn't formalized anything, hadn't discussed the kiss or the sleeping arrangements that had become nightly routine, everyone at Vanguard treated them as a unit. The press had noticed too. Tech billionaire's surprise family ran in 3 major outlets. Photos of Sebastian leaving the office with a baby carrier, of Elliot beside him looking exhausted but content, of all 4 of them entering the pediatrician's office together. The narrative had shifted from CEO's mysterious adoption to power couple builds unconventional family, and Sebastian's PR team had stopped trying to control it and simply leaned in. Elliot should have felt safe, should have relaxed into this new reality. But something had been gnawing at him for days, a feeling of being watched, of waiting for the other shoe to drop. His Omega instincts kept prickling with warning, though he couldn't identify the source. The threat materialized on a Thursday afternoon when Sebastian was in back-to-back meetings and Elliot was alone in the executive office, both twins napping peacefully. The elevator opened, and a man Elliot had never seen before stepped out. Tall, expensively dressed, with features similar enough to Sebastian's that recognition hit like a punch. Matthias Voss smiled, and it was all teeth. "You must be the mysterious caregiver everyone's talking about." Elliot stood slowly, positioning himself between Matthias and the sleeping twins. "This is a secured floor. You need to leave. I'm family. I have every right to visit my dear brother." Matthias moved closer, his alpha scent deliberately aggressive, designed to make an Omega submit. "Though I'm curious what exactly your role is here. Nanny? Assistant? Or something a bit more personal?" "I said leave. I've done my research on you, Elliot Chin. 2 years in compliance, completely unremarkable, and then suddenly you're living in Sebastian's penthouse, attending board dinners, playing house with children who mysteriously appeared 8 months after you joined the company." Matthias's smile sharpened. "The timeline is fascinating, as is the medical leave you took around the time of their birth. Claimed it was a family emergency, didn't you?" Elliot's blood went cold. "I don't know what you think you know. I know you're an Omega hiding your designation. I know those children are yours biologically. A simple DNA comparison would prove it. And I know Sebastian has no idea who you really are." Matthias pulled out his phone, showing Elliot photos, medical records, birth certificates, documents that should have been sealed. Child abandonment is a serious crime. Even more serious when the father is a wealthy alpha who could have provided. The media would have a field day. "What do you want?" Elliot's voice shook despite his attempt at control. "Simple. Leave. Take your generous severance, disappear, and let Sebastian get back to running his company without this domestic distraction. These children," Matthias glanced at the cribs with undisguised disdain, "are nothing but leverage against him. Weakness he can't afford." "They're not leverage," Elliot said fiercely. "They're his children. Our children. And I'm not leaving them again. Then I'll make sure everyone knows what you are. An Omega who abandoned his own babies, seduced a vulnerable alpha, and wormed his way into a fortune." Matthias leaned closer. "You think Sebastian will want you when he knows you've been lying to him from the beginning? You think the board will allow an unmated Omega with a history of child abandonment to influence company decisions? You'll lose everything. Your job, your reputation, custody of those brats. Get away from him." Sebastian's voice cut through the office like a blade. He stood in the doorway, and the alpha dominance rolling off him made even Matthias step back. "Now, Sebastian, I was just having a conversation with your assistant. I heard every word." Sebastian moved between Matthias and Elliot, his body language pure protection. "My office has recording equipment. Standard security protocol. So I have documented evidence of you threatening my mate and my children with blackmail and extortion." Matthias's confidence flickered. "Mate, you can't be serious. This Omega lied to you. I know exactly who Elliot is." Sebastian's voice was deadly calm. "I've known for 2 weeks. The DNA test I ran on all three of them came back conclusive. Elliot is their biological parent, and so am I. Which means we had an encounter 2 years ago that neither of us remembered clearly, and he made an impossible choice alone because the world we live in punishes Omega parents. That's not his shame. That's ours. Elliot stared at Sebastian's back, his mind reeling. He knew. He'd known for 2 weeks and said nothing. You think this makes you look better? Matthias laughed, sharp and ugly. You're claiming children with someone who abandoned them. The Ice King CEO, brought low by an Omega and illegitimate. They're not illegitimate. They're mine. Ours. Sebastian stepped closer, and Matthias actually backed toward the elevator. And you're going to listen very carefully, because this is the last time we'll ever speak. You are no longer part of the Voss estate. I've had the lawyers draw up papers removing you from any inheritance claim. You are banned from this building, from my property, and from any contact with my family. If you attempt to sell those medical records or leak any information, I will personally destroy you, legally, financially, and socially. You can't. I can and I will. Your attempts to leverage my past against me failed because you don't understand something fundamental. I'm not ashamed anymore. I was abandoned as a child, yes. But I chose to save these children from that same fate. Elliot gave them up to protect them, then came back when he had the chance. We're both broken people who built something beautiful out of our damage. Sebastian's voice dropped to alpha command. Now get out of my building before I have security remove you. Matthias fled, and the elevator doors closed on his retreating form. Sebastian turned to Elliot, and the expression on his face was complicated. Hurt and understanding and fierce protectiveness all tangled together. You knew I knew? No, Elliot whispered. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was waiting for you to trust me enough to tell me yourself. Sebastian cupped his face gently. But I understand why you couldn't. I do. And Elliot, nothing he said changes anything. You're still here. They're still ours. We're still a family. Elliot's knees gave out, and Sebastian caught him, holding him while he finally let himself break. For months later, the penthouse had transformed into something unrecognizable from the sterile showcase it had been. Toys scattered across the living room floor in cheerful chaos. Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit lived permanently on the couch. Lucas's teething rings occupied the coffee table alongside Sebastian's financial reports. The walls displayed candid photos. First smiles, tummy time, family portraits that Marcus had insisted on taking. Mrs. Kong had stopped trying to maintain museum-level organization and instead embraced what she called lived-in luxury. Elliot stood in the kitchen preparing bottles for the twins' evening feeding, the mate bond a constant warmth at the base of his spine. He could feel Sebastian's presence even before he heard footsteps. The Alpha was in his home office 2 rooms away, wrapping up a conference call, his attention split between quarterly projections and the baby monitor on his desk. The bond had settled into something Elliot had never imagined possible. Comfort without claustrophobia, connection without loss of self, belonging without fear. Lily had started crawling last week, a fact that had sent Sebastian into a panicked baby-proofing frenzy that involved hiring contractors to pad every sharp corner in the penthouse. Lucas was close behind, rocking on his hands and knees with determined concentration. They were thriving, bright-eyed and curious, and so loved it showed in every confident babble and fearless exploration. Sebastian emerged from his office as Elliot finished the bottles, moving directly to where the twins played on their activity mat. He scooped up Lily with practiced ease, settling her against his hip while she grabbed at his tie. The transformation from the man who'd held babies like unexploded ordnance to this, casual confidence, natural affection, still took Elliot's breath away. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers and tell me where you're watching from. I've been thinking about their names, Sebastian said, accepting a bottle from Elliot and settling into the rocking chair. Lily latched on immediately, her small hand curling around his finger. Voss. It's my name, but it's not really mine. It's the name of people who took me in, who were kind but never quite family. He met Elliot's eyes. I want to change it. Voschan. For both of them. Legal and official. Elliot froze with Lucas in his arms. Sebastian. They're ours equally, Sebastian continued. You carried them, gave them life, made the hardest choice anyone could make because you loved them. I found them, brought them home, learned how to be what they needed. Neither of us is more their parent than the other. Their name should reflect that. The board will. The board can accept it or find a new CEO. I'm done making my family smaller to make other people comfortable. Sebastian's voice was firm but gentle. What do you think? Lily and Lucas Voschan. I think it's perfect, Elliot whispered, his throat tight. I think they're perfect. I think we're. Marry me. Elliot's breath stopped. Sebastian was watching him with an intensity that had nothing to do with dominance and everything to do with hope. Raw and vulnerable and completely unguarded. I know we did everything backwards, Sebastian continued. Children before dating, living together before courting, mate bond before proper claiming. But I want to do this one thing right. I want to stand in front of everyone and promise you forever. I want legal recognition that you're mine and I'm yours. I want our children to grow up knowing their fathers chose each other deliberately. He shifted Lily carefully, reaching into his pocket to produce a simple platinum band. Elliot Chin, will you marry me? Elliot looked at this man who'd been called the Ice King, who'd built walls so high no one could scale them, who now sat in a nursery with a baby in his arms and his heart completely exposed. He looked at their children, Lily with Sebastian's determined chin and his own dark eyes, Lucas with Sebastian's intensity and his gentle nature. He looked at the life they'd built from broken pieces and second chances. Yes, Elliot said, and it felt like the first truly free choice he'd ever made. Yes, I'll marry you. We'll marry you. All three of us. Sebastian's smile was incandescent. He stood carefully, balancing Lily, and kissed Elliot with a tenderness that made the mate bond flare warm and golden between them. Lucas, pressed between them, made a sound of protest at being squished, and they broke apart laughing. Welcome home, Sebastian murmured against Elliot's temple. All of you. Forever. And Elliot, who'd spent so long believing he didn't deserve to be wanted, finally understood what belonging felt like.